We are the group 5. We are doing our presentation course on digital citizenship. I am Austin Rolian.
I'm Angelina Gayton.
I'm Anthony Guest.
All right, so just an introduction. Today we will be discussing what it means to be a responsible digital citizen. We're going to cover the topics of media balance and well-being, digital footprint and identity, privacy and security, relationships and communication, news and media literacy, and digital drama, cyberbullying, and hate speech.
Okay, so I will be discussing media balance and well-being. Media balance teaches people how to be mindful of their use of technology and see what kind of emotions are evoked. It's important to limit the amount of usage on social media, manage how much time you spend online. There are healthy ways to use the media and also harmful ways. For instance, it is more likely for vulnerable teenagers to use the media in a harmful way. Media balance deals more with analyzing how the media can impact someone, creating them to reflect on the different feelings and emotions that arise when they engage in certain activities that involve digital media. Some more about media balance and well-being is, since the media can impact how someone feels negatively, it is important to always be cautious with the media. An individual's well-being should not be impacted by the media poorly, and if it is, then there needs to be a reevaluation. Media balance and well-being also deals with learning how the media could impact community and society overall. Everyone should also remember the importance and value of real-life social interaction. It is good for others to interact with each other in person rather than through the media. So my opinion on media balance and well-being is that, of course, you should always limit your time and kind of see like how much time you're spending on social media and how it's affecting you. And if it is impacting your life in like a positive way, which is good, like sometimes it can help someone's self-esteem, but it can also destroy someone's self-esteem or also bring out certain emotion. If you're reading like something that's negative, so you kind of should avoid that. So if it's going to affect you in that way. But I feel like the media can also help when you interact with others that you can't meet with in person, like kind of what we're doing now through Zoom. But also you should remember that social interaction is important for the mind as well. So that's like my opinion on it.
So I'm going to be talking about digital footprint and identity. So first, to go over what your digital footprint is, it can be defined by a trail of data that you create while using the internet. So whenever you enter a website, enter your information, the website you visit, through the emails you send or the information you submit, all of that gets tracked. And it basically, the footprint is defined by like your imprint on the internet. So that will grow as you continue to use different websites. So an active digital footprint can be categorized as what a person intentionally leaves on the internet. So different uploads you might put on social media like Facebook or Twitter, where you're putting your information out there actively. On the flip side, oftentimes people are not entirely conscious of how far your digital footprint can extend, and this is known as your passive digital footprint. So this can include website visits and actions and online services, online searches, and online purchases where you're not really considering that the information you're putting in or that visiting a certain website will be tracking your information and extending your footprint. Your digital footprint and especially your digital identity are very important. Of course, especially for us as students planning to enter, our careers post-college. Companies and recruiters perform searches on applicants, and they're able to view a large portion of a person's digital footprint and digital identity with very little effort. Your digital footprint tells the story of your online activity and presence, and such can be very determining in your application to a job, especially with recruiters viewing your social media. The identity you create for yourself online can present a job candidate that is very credible and responsible, but at the same time, one certain photo on your social media account could change that completely and paint a picture of someone that's not very careful of what they allow others to see online. Cases have been made public where employers state that they're choosing not to hire an applicant based on photos of them in a bathing suit or drinking alcohol. And those are only the cases that have been made public. So one can only imagine how many times this happened and it wasn't made known to the applicant. My personal thoughts on this are that there's so many times that we are not entirely conscious of what we're allowing to be on the internet. How many times that we maybe get, a few pages of the, on contract when entering a service or purchasing something, where rather than reading all the fine print, we just choose next and sign. There's so many times that we don't really consider what we might be putting on social media in regards to our career or applying to jobs. And while it is unfortunate that there are people that are, not as open-minded or might criticize people for what they put online, we definitely should be at least conscious that everything that we do online can be tracked and can affect our future. There was a story made public recently in Texas where a woman was denied a job because she had a beer and she was wearing a bikini in a pool. So these stories are starting to come out more and more. So we at least should be conscious of it.
Okay, that's like a good way to segue into privacy and security. Social media accounts are powerful tools in the wrong hands. Hacking occurs all over the world, and it is important to watch what you post online. It is highly recommended that each form of social network has a different password. When an individual uses one password for multiple services, they put themselves in a position to only be as safe as the least secure service used. It is very important to check and watch your email. Hackers tend to direct message you before anything, disguising themselves to be someone they are not. It's important not to be too personal in any social network because people can easily figure out a lot more than what is posted. Some more about privacy and security that if an individual has an account solely based on their personal life, it is highly recommended that the profile is private. If not, they should be cautious on posting about their everyday life. It is also important to always lock your phone. Hackers don't just come online. Your phone could fall into the hands of a complete stranger, which could give them full access to all your social networks. It's essential to use the block button. Whenever spam messages are sent or a spammer follows you, it is important to block them. Don't just ignore it. The social networking service will monitor it, and if enough people partake in that same action, the spammer loses. So my opinion on this is, I don't really have social media just for that reason because I don't want anyone knowing about my personal life. But I feel that some people do post more than they should and it's public and other people can take advantage of that kind of by watching what you're doing, and you don't know because anybody anywhere can see that. It's not just who you're friends with. If you have a public page, someone could just look you up and now they're going through your profile without you even having a clue. And I feel like the more you post, the more people could kind of understand what you're doing, where you're going to be, and especially when people share their location online, which I would never recommend doing. But also to go back with what was said before, it's important to have your own privacy online because it could affect your a future career that you want or something like that if something is seen. And with security, now that everything's so technologically advanced, anyone could get into anything. Now that I have a computer, it makes everything so much easier. If I wanted to just hack into something or get into a website or get into someone's profile, I feel like they made it so much easier so that now you have to be extra cautious with if you're posting maybe the smallest thing, someone could figure out what your password is just by saying this is something I love doing. They could just figure those things out. It's not as hard as it used to be when you kind of had to okay, go into it, do some research. But now it's you just go to a profile, you see pictures, and you can get any information you want on someone just by looking at their profile or looking at what they kind of have a status or something. It tells the time, the location, and that I think people have to be more cautious with because especially with how we're living today, it's definitely not the kind of world that you want to post your personal things.
So now I'm going to be talking about news, media, and literacy. So the question of what makes a source credible, there's so many different accounts of everything, especially considering all of the COVID and all of the different things with government going on the past few years. There's so many different opinions, so many different sources that it's kind of a huge influx of information. and it can be hard to determine what we should listen to, or at least what we should take credible. There's questions like, if it comes from a reputable news source, is the source an official government website? Does it end in .gov? Can we trust that? Or does it have to be, has to have some credibility within the field of discussion? So we're going to get into it a little bit deeper in the next slide, but for now, some questions you could ask or different methods are: one way of determining the credibility of a source is determining where they are getting their information from and whether or not this information is backed by objective facts or quantitative statistics rather than subjective thoughts or opinion. Another thing to consider is when you're trying to gain information on something, whether or not you already find yourself leaning in one direction or another in regards to opinion, it is always important to try and view articles from both sides of the story in order to gain a more nuanced opinion and at least be able to understand what the other argument has, and so that you just know what's going on both sides of the front. So now to get down to some specific criteria when trying to determine if a source is considered a good source. One thing to look at first is, of course, the author. Most websites, especially journals, articles, and news outlets, will list the article, and you can even oftentimes select their name and you can go to a page where it'll list different qualifications or credentials that they might have. And even beyond that, taking a look at how they're connected to the field they're writing about, seeing if where they got their degree from, if they have a degree or a diploma, seeing if they have won any awards either in that field or in the field of journalism. You can also look at if the author or publication has been peer reviewed. That's very important, making sure that these people are credible for what they're writing and making sure that they are indeed fact checking. You want to make sure, of course, that their opinion is objective rather than subjective, that they're stating facts and backing those facts by sourcing them rather than stating different opinions. You want to check to see that the website is up to date and that they have current news articles and working links as well. Article, you want to make sure that the article has a complete list of works cited compiled from different credible and authoritative sources. And beyond that, you want to see if those sources, if there's a mixture of web-based and print sources, because of course, typically with print sources, it's a little bit more reading. That means that they're combing a little bit more from the information, and it's going to be a little bit more specific and just a little bit more enlightened. And finally, if the website domain ends in .edu, .org, or .gov, although that's not to say that you can't trust websites ending in .com, they're just a little bit less credible. So like I said earlier, this is something that's really important to consider, especially with all the influx information we're getting with in regards to how we should be acting with COVID, government, things like that, as well as just doing research for school and then even beyond in our careers. There's so much information online right now. It used to be you search something up and there would be one source. Now there are hundreds or thousands of sources. So you don't know who to trust, especially if they have conflicting information. So you definitely just always want to make sure when doing your research first that you're not taking anything for face value, and you want to be able to make your own opinion and form your own opinion rather than just adopting the opinion of another person just because they're an author in a publication. You also want to make sure that they're fact checking their information and make sure that they do have that list of works cited and that they are making themselves credible for what they are writing.
So relationship and communication. Building good relationships and communicating effectively are both important aspects of being good digital citizens, but they're also very important for your everyday life. It's important to build good relationships because everyone you can encounter can have an impact on your life. So it's always good to leave a good impression. And communicating openly, honestly, and effectively is critical in order for people to understand each other and to be able to share ideas and information. Studies have shown that strong relationships and communication skills are integral to everyone, not just internet users. People who are at risk of psychosis exhibited three central themes in terms of relationships and communication. They showed problems with interpersonal relationships and minimized opportunities for constructive communication. They showed trouble communicating with others about their psychological problems. And they showed that they had experiences of communicating with others about these problems, and they may not have been exactly positive. So it affects everyone in their everyday life, not just people who are going on the internet and communicating through social media, through messaging apps, and whatever else. And effective relationships and communication is crucial not only to individuals who want to be good digital citizens, like I said, but to those who want to be good citizens in general. My opinion on relationships and communication is that they're both important to work on and to better for everyone in their everyday life, not just on the internet. Communicating well with others, like I said before, helps people better understand each other, and having good and positive relationships is beneficial to both parties involved. Unfortunately, cyberbullying and hate speech is a problem that plagues internet users all over the world. Some people take pleasure in cutting people down online, and it has the same effects as if they were saying it to their face. It's basically the same as putting people down and bullying people in person, but it's a new avenue and a new medium using the internet. It has been more prevalent than ever in the era of the internet and social media because previous generations didn't have mediums like this to put their bullying out. It can have huge impacts on the person being bullied, much like physical real life bullying. Both forms of bullying and cyberbullying and hate speech like this are unacceptable, and they go against effectively communicating because they are basically the exact opposite of effective communication. Cyberbullying and hate speech is closed-minded, negative speech, which I feel have no place in anyone's life. And they're both always, like I said, negative, and they're intended to hurt people. Hate speech can be divided into two categories, which is directed and generalized. Directed is more personal, less analytical, and angrier. So it targets a person, it targets who they are, what they do, what job they have maybe. Generalized is more analytical, less authentic, and strangely enough concerns itself with mostly religion. So it focuses on a group of people, like maybe a race or a religion or a group of workers, let's say. And hate speech of any kind can be avoided if individuals took time to be more understanding and accepting of difference and change, rather than immediately criticizing and condemning anything that challenges someone's preconceived beliefs.
I feel like
Thank you so
that's really,
much.
oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry. I was just going to add a comment that I feel like that's really relevant right now, especially with
Yeah.
everything that's kind of occurring. But also, when I look at that, sometimes I feel like people will post things just because it's trending, which isn't how it should be. And people will follow like whatever other people are saying. So like those kind of things like remain on the internet forever. So even if they post a video or they kind of put their opinion out there, once you post it, it can't be removed. Like when we first started, we watched a video, it's always, going to be there. Like with cloud computing, it's somewhere. Whether it's not on your computer or someone near you, it's somewhere. So that's why I feel like the internet is it could be such a good place, but such a dangerous thing, because you have to be really cautious on what you post, because that can always get back to you. And even if it's in like years from now, or let's just say you 20 years from now, you post something when you were younger, and it's like, oh, I was just like a teenager, I had no clue what I was saying. It can still get back to you whether you said something like negative about someone else or about someone's race, and that could really, really impact like your future. Even if you have a job already, they can see that, and maybe someone could send it to them like, oh, did you see this about so and so? Whether you were a teenager or not, it's still something that you said, and it's going to remain on the internet forever, which is why it's really important that everything that we just talked about kind of intertwines with each other, because you have to be mindful of what you're doing, like especially with like a digital footprint, your privacy, the security, the hate speech, like what you're saying, and definitely like cyberbullying. That should never be a thing at all, but it still occurs. So I just wanted to add that comment.
Yeah,
That is a great
we're
point. That's definitely true, where you put something out on the internet and you have to consider that it can be viewed in so many different ways by different people with different perspectives. They could have different interpretations. And especially putting something out, when you're younger, there have been a lot of stories about people, getting canceled by different comments they made when they were young. And the thing is, even though they are, in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, and when they put those things out, they weren't really of the same mindset. People are still viewing them, not as children, but rather just viewing the statement in itself and trying to put and attach different meanings to it. So you definitely need to be entirely conscious of what you're putting out there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this all just ties together to thinking for yourself and doing the right thing, basically. What every kid is taught in elementary school: do unto others as you want done unto you. Just be good to others just like you would want them to be good to you. There's no need to go around and spread any sort of hatred or negativity.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. But I do feel like when you discuss like relationships and communication, that's especially really important, especially online, because you kind of need to focus on how you're communicating with others, because I might say something and you could take it a million different ways, but I could just mean it in one way.
Right.
And
but however you communicate it is how I will interpret it.
exactly.
So that's why communication is important.
And online, you can't really tell what I mean or how I'm saying it, or
Right.
no emotions are really expressed online unless it's like I'm saying it through a video but if I'm just typing it out, you could read it any way your mind wants to. So communication is definitely important when you're doing it online, because you kind of need to be specific, like this is what I'm saying and this is what I mean, not, equivocating something else. And building relationships is also important too. If you're doing it for business or it's with friends, like it's good to build a relationship online, because then like you can also still do it in person, social interaction. Like it's kind of like you have two sort of relationships.
Yeah. And the reason I focus on these two topics is because I'm going to school to be a teacher, and these two I feel are very important and relevant to the classroom. And students communicating and building relationships with the kids is how they'll be motivated to do the work and do the work well. And then cyberbullying and hate speech. Cyberbullying is such a problem in middle school, high school. It doesn't even have to be stated how big of a problem it is when we're that age.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it is definitely more like prevalent when you're in high school, because I feel like that's how people attack others. And I feel like it's a lot different when you get to college, because you don't really deal with as much of like the cyberbullying, because it's like you're not in a select group, like you're on your own kind of thing. But in high school, I feel like you're so secluded, and it's kind of people just attack you. And if one person is attacking you, then everyone has to, because it forms kind of a trend. So that's like another thing. But being a teacher, it's really important to know like everything that we just talked about, because then you can kind of enlighten others. Like this is what you guys should be careful with, because they give you computers and everyone's like online. So it's really important.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you so much for listening to our presentation, and I hope that we've given you the building blocks to becoming a more responsible digital citizen.